Welcome to the new year, 2019, new year, new me, new reading goals, right? I'm Chris.
I'm Andrea.
And we're going to talk about our favorite books that we read in 2018.
It was supposed to be a top 10, but then Chris said she had like 4 runners-up. Runner-up?
Runners-up?
Or runner-up?
It's like a beauty contest?
No, I was just trying to figure out if it was runners-up or runner-ups.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Anyway, so we each have a top 10 list, and then we each have a couple of honorable mentions.
If you could summarize your reading year, how would you describe it?
There were some interesting trends. I read maybe like 6 books by Nigerian authors, and it wasn't on purpose. It just happened. All of them were female Nigerian authors, actually. So yeah, there was a lot of, I feel like I know a lot more about Nigeria now than I did before. But there was also a lot of like magical realism in the books I read. I think I read more sci-fi than I usually do. I credit this to Chris coming to live with me within like the third quarter of the year.
Q3.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself. I read a little bit more than I did last year. I read 92 books this year, despite parenting 2 teenagers. So that was my worry, that I wasn't going to read as much because I'm a lot busier this year. I felt like I read a very diverse list of authors, and I think I have kind of a diverse top 10 too.
Okay, so when I was looking back at the books that I read about 90 something too, I don't know. But I didn't love all of the things that I read. I was really unhappy with what I started in the beginning of the year. I think also I was in a weird state of mind at the beginning of the year. I was just not in the mood, and I read a lot the year before that.
This was when she was in Puerto Rico, post Hurricane Maria, for those of you.
It's just like not in a good mood, not in a good reading mood. The closer I got to the summer, the closer I was like feeling, okay, I was kind of more into my groove. So it was really hard to pick. A lot of the ones that I picked were things that I read very close to the end of the year. And hopefully this year, more diverse reading.
Yeah, this year we're both doing the Read Harder challenge. You've done it before, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is my first year.
Varying degrees of success.
Yeah, I think I had like 16 of them like accidentally. But I'm trying to, on purpose, do all of the challenges this year.
So the way that we're going to kind of organize our picks, mm-hmm. they're not in any particular order, but at least my favorites I chose because they were books that I enjoyed reading and that just stuck with me for the rest of the year. So because of the amount of stuff that I read, I sometimes just instantly forget the plot or characters unless I'm like very purposefully taking notes. And I decided that this year my top books were books that impacted me, resonated with me in some way. Might not have been like the best written books, but they were my top, like my favorite books of the year. Did you have anything? What's your list made up of?
Some of the books that made me cry the most. That's not that hard. I'm pretty emotional. Some of the ones that disturbed me the most, not in like a gross sort of way, but in a, oh my gosh, like if this was happening to me or like someone I knew, I'd be, But yeah, all were books that I really enjoyed, that I read relatively quickly. I have a couple that are short series or like 2 parts, but I just put them together.
La cosa no es tan grave si tú pudieras acercarte más como ayer. Hay tanto por recordar. Nuestra vereda se llenó de flores.
Let's do this. Let's jump into. I took notes. They're like disorganized.
I did not.
They're like phrases.
I don't take notes.
I took notes.
This is a common complaint of hers when we play D&D.
That's true. But I'm just a note taker.
Okay.
I take notes. First of my picks is The Stars Are Legion by Cameron Hurley. It's a book that I read early in the year. I loved it. It was so different, and it was so different that I decided to recommend it to you. And I was convinced that you weren't gonna like it, but I decided to give it a shot. And you ended up liking it too. It made it on the list.
Yeah,
So.
and that's one of my top 10 too. That was really good.
So in my notes I put, no boys allowed. So this is a book in which they're only female characters. And it is a weird and gross book.
It's very violent.
Very violent, very queer, obviously, because there's only female. So there's like female-female relationships.
It's set in space. It's kind of a major.
Yeah.
It's a space book.
Yeah, this first book description is going to be rough. It's really difficult to explain what the book is about.
You're right. It's like their ships are planets that are alive.
They shoot guns that are like cephalopods.
Yeah.
It's just crazy bizarre.
It's one of those books you have to read it, and I think you're right. You either love it or hate it, because it's just very unapologetically what it is.
But that's why it's so good. At least that's why I consider it so good.
So I put The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I love spoken word poetry, so I had followed Elizabeth for a while online. She posts a lot of poetry on YouTube, poems she does herself, poems she does with other people. A lot of them have to do with the Latina experience. They're just really great. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you should totally look her up on YouTube. I heard that she was writing a YA novel, and I was super excited. It turned out to be one of my favorite books of the year. It's about a teenager, Latina, in New York. It's now 100% poetry. It's got like a mix of things. Very beautiful. You can tell that the author is a poet and very good at it. But it was also just that wasn't my experience growing up, but it's the experience of a lot of teenagers now growing up. So I think it's a really important book, and I'm really glad that it exists and that it maybe leads other teenagers to explore poetry and spoken word as like an outlet for their feelings and figuring out who they are. I read it really early in the year, but it just stuck with me.
It's on my list too. I think I have it, started it.
There's a lot of books on my list that are on Chris's list because I recommended them, but then she didn't read them.
I start and then I finish. This is the thing. Sometimes I'll start a book and then I'll like stop and I'll pick something else up. I'm really reading wise. I am the person that is like reading a lot of things at the same time. And then some things just kind of get forgotten. I haven't forgotten Poet X, but I just haven't picked it back up again.
Yeah.
So cool. I'm excited to read it. I know how much you love it, and that's why I want to read it too.
Chris's next pick, she's struggling to say, so I'm going to do it for her, is Lives of the Monster Dogs by Kirsten Bacchus.
And so I picked this book up only because of the cover, because there's a dog in a suit.
Oh.
See, there's like human hands and whatever. And this book is extremely strange. I saw it on Instagram, and I said, I need to read this. There's a dog on the cover. But I ended up listening to it on audiobook, which was another really interesting experience. The audible version of it is just the one that's like, it sounds literally like books on tape. Like the quality is very difficult to hear, but it just kind of brought an ambiance to like an already really bizarre story. So this is like a group of creatures that a scientist created. The scientist dies and they live like recluse for a little while until they basically just kind of decide, okay, we're moving, we're leaving. And they walk into a city and everyone is like, oh my God, they're just horrified by these like creatures. Their sadness at their master leaving and not really having a plan for them and them having to figure out, okay, what do we do now in this world that really hates us? And it's just them dealing with, okay, what now? It's great. I got it right here. You should read it. It's weird. Yeah. But I was into it.
I guess my number 2 would be Lethal White by Robert Galbraith, whatever. It's J.K. Rowling. Everybody knows it's J.K. Rowling. I don't know why they keep publishing them under that name. It is the Cormoran Strike series, which if you haven't read it, you should. It's amazing. It's J.K. Rowling's adult detective series that she wrote, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, I tried Casual Vacancy and it was terrible. I agree, it was terrible, and I never thought that I would read another one of her adult books, but thankfully I read this one. Basically, the series follows this very stocky large, like think Hagrid if he was ex-military and really broke and lonely and started a private detective agency. That's Cormoran Strike. And his lovely assistant, part-time, but not in the beginning.
Okay, well, they become partners later.
They become partners later. But anyway, so it just follows them, and each book is a different huge case. Great character development from book to book. Like I highly, highly recommend the series. So 2018, I read the 4th book, did not disappoint. It was so long. It was like 695 pages or something.
Read it in like 3 days.
No, it was super long, but if you like detective novels, if you like J.K. Rowling, I mean, it's really good. Don't judge her based on casual vacancy.
Or her likes on Twitter.
Well, I didn't know about that until today.
Okay, my next book is a book that you would never read. It's the Pisces by Melissa Broder, and I understand why people wouldn't like this book. So it is the story of this woman who has a breakup, goes to live with her sister, has to learn or unlearn some of the habits that, of her seeking affection or seeking like validation through other people. And in the middle of like all of these really shitty things that she does or happen to her, she meets a fish man that she ends up having like a sexual relationship with.
For the record, I'm not against it because of the fish sex, because I loved The Shape of Water.
Mm-hmm. No, I put it here, fish man sex! She is an extremely unlikable protagonist. Yeah. I didn't like her. I found the things that she did to be disturbing, and I didn't enjoy it. And there is like, I guess like a right trigger warning for animal neglect, and that part's really serious. The reason why I didn't love this book because there was like animal neglect in it though. The reason why I like this book so much is because despite her unlikability and despite her huge flaws, her sadness from the things that were happening to her was just so palpable and relatable to me. I've never like neglected a creature or done awful things or, had sex with a fish man. But I have had the kind of like train of thoughts of similar to what she had, and I could relate to her. I related to her very strongly in her sadness. Like I said, oh, okay, maybe not in this way, I'm like her, but in this way, I have been in this headspace. I have been there. It read so true to me. She felt like a real person. We would not be friends, but it's someone that I felt is like a real flesh and blood kind of person. Yeah. And for that, I mean, the stuff that happens in this book is just so intense. Dating hijinks, like waxing your vagina and asking yourself, why am I doing this? And then, kind of like falling into an easy conversation with a fish man and then being like, okay, I'm about this. I really liked it. If you don't like it after the first chapter, quit. If you can't even handle a person just being completely awful and selfish and neglecting a creature, then don't read this. But if you can push past that and move past all the flaws in this character, I think it's an excellent read and a great character study. Fish sex.
I included a 4-part children's series. Well, okay, it's not children. It's like middle. It's like upper elementary, early middle school age kids. It's the Track series by Jason Reynolds. I think these are the first books he's written for such a young audience. It's definitely the first ones I've read by him that were kids' books. And so it follows 4 kids who join a track team in the city. So the first book is from the point of view of one kid. The second book is from the point of view of the other. You don't need to read the series in order. Like, they're all meant to be like standalone books, but all of the characters are in each other's books. So I liked reading it in order and kind of, occasionally they would mention things that had happened in previous books. These are all African American kids too. It is Ghost, Patina, Sunny, and Lou. That's the name of the 4 kids and the 4 books. Each of the kids has an issue that, is really plaguing their life at that moment. So, like, the first book follows this kid whose dad tried to shoot his mom for wanting to leave him. And it's, around the anniversary of that. And they're also very, they're poor. So he can't afford stuff like track shoes. One of them is an albino, so that's like his whole thing. I'm kind of, dealing with image issues and, confidence. The girl, Patina, that's the story that most resonated with me because her mom got diabetes, which, happens a lot, had to have her leg amputated. And so she is being raised by her aunt and uncle. So it's like kinship care. She still has a really good relationship with her mom, sees her all the time, but they're not able to live with her. She's on dialysis and all these things. So, as a foster parent, you don't see stories like that super often, where it's presented in a very positive light. Like family stepped in, they're taking care of the kids, they continue the relationship with the mom.
Best case scenario.
Yeah. The other kid, he's just like a little loopy, like out there, like nobody really understands him. Like he's just weird. He's homeschooled, so they're all like very different personalities, very different home issues, but all the books cover like strong family ties. Like all these kids have, even when things are hard, they all have really good relationships with the family, adults in their life. They have really good relationships with each other. They have an awesome outlet, which is track. Sometimes they make mistakes and stuff, but like the exercise is what they come to, and that team spirit.
And it's like a book about sports that isn't too like sports heavy.
Yeah. Like it's not. I just think it's such like I love the books, and I'm so glad they exist because kids need more books like that where it's like, yes, things are super shitty, but like you always have people you can rely on, be a family member, a friend, find positive outlets like sports, music. No, they were fantastic. They're very short. I want to own the box set because also the graphic design on these covers is amazing.
I'm reading Ghost for Read Harder. That's the one that I plan to read.
Oh yeah, because it's a kid's book that won an award, and you're gonna want to keep going. You'll see. You'll see. They're so fast to read too, just because they're like meant for kids. They're great. They're great. So track series, Jason Reynolds.
So my next choice was Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. He's written Head Full of Ghosts and Disappearance at Devil's Rock. I really love Disappearance at Devil's Rock. A lot of people didn't love it, but I loved it for the same reasons that I love this book. It's kind of similar. There are some like supernatural, like magical realism elements to it. But at the end of the day, the horror is in the mundane. So the premise is that there is this couple, these two dads and their daughter get visited by these people bearing strange like tools, and I don't want to really spoil much of it because really not a lot happens, but so much happens. You know that gnawing sensation when you know something awful is going to happen? That burning sensation persisted throughout the entire book because it was just like waiting for the awful thing to happen. So the people that come to visit are convinced that the world is going to fall into a calamity. And they have to do like something horrible to prevent it. And it doesn't make it really clear if they're just under some kind of like shared psychosis.
Yeah.
Or
something's
actually going to happen. Are they torturing this family for the sake of it? It's the worst. And I read it and I remember it's one of those books that I did like the Bert gif where he's just like he looks into the camera. It was one of those. I chose to believe that it was magic because the alternative was too awful for me to even consider. It's a great book though. Can't wait to read what he comes up with next. It's a series of short stories.
Since you said The Stars Were Legion, which was one from my list too, I'll go ahead and talk about Freshwater, which I know is on your list as well.
It is.
One of the few books I recommended to Chris. And she read.
I did.
Woo.
It's great. Oh my god.
So Freshwater is by
Akaweke Emezi.
Oh, I'm so bad with names.
Yeah. I can't say Kirsten.
That's true.
Under pressure, I can't say it.
Freshwater was one of the most disturbing books I read all year. It's by a Nigerian author. And it's basically the protagonist just goes through all of these traumas, like one after the other. And the way that she copes with them is she has these different Nigerian like gods like living inside her, and they are like they fight for control. So at different parts in her life, like certain gods dictate her actions, and so she acts differently with different people. Mm-hmm. This is one of those books where you can either read it literally, as in they are all of these supernatural beings like affecting what mm-hmm. she's doing, or the way that I read it, which is like the horrible things that happened to her were so horrible that her brain just like fragmented and created all of these different personalities mm-hmm. to cope. But either way, it doesn't matter like which way you choose to read it. It is a fantastic book. It stays with you. It's just one of those books that you immediately, like, I just wanted to be able to talk about it with someone. So mm-hmm. I was like, Chris, you need to read this so we can talk about it.
Yeah, and our talk was basically like, okay, what did you believe? What did you think happened?
Oh my gosh, it's just so intense. And I don't want to go super into, like, what happens because I don't want to, give any spoilers. But it's unlike anything else I've ever read. Just the writing style, the way... there's these constant switches between
chronology.
Yeah, between like order of events and who's in control of the character at any given time. The narration is so unreliable that you'll be reading about stuff happening and you're constantly wondering like, did it really happen like this? Is this just the way she perceived it, or the way she wants to perceive it in order to make it less bad? You never know.
Yeah, or the way that it was happening because this one deity decided that. It's also a coming of age story. And my one note for this is I was confused, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It was not a challenging book to read in that sense. It was I want to go on this journey. I want to see where this takes me, even if there's no clear endpoint, no clear answer. It was just, I was like reveling in the mystery of what was going to happen and what was the truth. Thanks for recommending it to me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So my next pick is The Sea Queen by Linnea Hartseeker. I don't know how to say it. So I chose The Sea Queen because I read The Half-Drowned King at the beginning of the year. So The Sea Queen is the sequel to that. The way that it's written, it's kind of like you're expecting magic to happen, but it doesn't. It reads like a saga, but it's still really cool. And the first book left me, I didn't put it in this list, not even the honorable mentions, because although I loved like Rangvald and just everybody who was in it, I was a ride or die for Swan Hill. When is it the right time to be a woman, really? Yeah. She wants to go on adventures. She wants to do so many things, but she has to get married. And, in the second book, she really kind of, without spoiling the first one, she gets to do that. She becomes a master at, managing and navigating. And there's just still like a ton of struggles for her. The Sea Queen gave me everything that I wanted. I had to wait for it. I understand now that I had to wait for it. Well, it was such a sweet payoff to see her finally come into her own, have some like super heart-wrenching like difficulties and, persevere and be like really strong character. But like this like warrior queen like vibes. I was here for it. I really enjoyed it. It was like, it made me feel strong after I read it too.
I have Cruddy by Linda Berry on my list. If you're unfamiliar with Linda Berry, she publishes a lot of like art journal type things. And in the past, I've given them a shot. I haven't been as into them, probably because I'm not an art person. Like I don't do art, so I guess I don't identify with that as much. However, I picked up Cruddy. I don't know why. I think I just came across it on Goodreads for some reason, and it's the diary of a girl. It's a graphic novel, lots of art in it, but it's a novel. I mean, I know when people picture like graphic novels, they think, these slightly thicker than usual comics, but this is a book. And I don't know how to explain it other than it's this girl who's on a lot of drugs and has had a lot of shitty things happen to her, goes on this road trippy type adventure. Things happen, lots of serious things happen. I really just wanted her to be okay the whole book. But I also didn't know, sometimes I didn't know if things were happening for real, if she was imagining them because of the stuff that she was on. But either way, I was very immersed in the story as it happened. I really hope that she writes more books like this, because I really, really loved it. Chris and I read My Favorite Thing is Monsters last year, and if you've read that, this has a very similar vibe. My Favorite Thing is Monsters and now Cruddy are the only two graphic novels that I've ever read that I've been as invested in as if I was reading a novel. Because usually graphic novels I pick up because I think they'll be fun, a short read. I really enjoy them, but I wouldn't say that I'm like on the edge of my seat, like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? Like, I hope everything ends okay. Like, these were two books that I really felt that way. So if you want that kind of graphic experience, I would definitely recommend Cruddy. I really liked it.
Literary just kind of happens to me. Like, I will find one of her books and be like, oh, I want to buy this. I bought Syllabus that way. Yeah, just if I find it, so this is the one I'm going to seek it out. I'm going to seek it out and I'm going to look it up and I'm going to read it. Okay.
Al pasar bailándola, eran tiempos de ilusión.